Hello, this is Laren with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today I'm going to be checking out some stuff for the DnD5e rule set. The stuff in particular is the Curse of Strahd Van Richten's content. I'm also using the Syrinscape web player to play sounds that are set up and linked for that particular content. Right now, this is the music that's assigned to the Death House encounter, which is one of the first adventures that you can run for your new group. So I'm thinking about focusing more on that as opposed to the entire adventure, but I do want to touch on that and show some things and resources and some tips. So first things first, I'm assuming that you already have Fantasy Grounds and that you have a license, and then also you have the content. So what I have quite a few things loaded. So right now I have in the library, I have a ton of modules loaded. These all come from specific extensions or add-ons. In this case, these are modules. So we have Curse of Strahd and also the core rulebooks. And then there are some map packs that you can pick up from the DM's Guild that are really helpful. Like, for instance, there's a Castle Ravenloft player maps. So what this is somebody's gone through and redid all the maps, and they've also added all of the links and the updated line of sight and such to the map. So that makes it a lot easier to just grab that and run. Now you can use the ones that are provided with the adventure, but let's take a look at the difference in this. So the reason why you'd want to even go to using something like that is possibly the maps that come with the adventure may or may not be good for virtual tabletop. So a lot of the maps that you get with the official Wizards of the Coast content are not quite set up for virtual tabletop. Now that may change in the future, but as far as I know now, it's not very conducive to running adventures in Fantasy Grounds or any other virtual tabletop. So I'm going to go to the maps and images. So these are the ones that come from this free map pack that's on the DM's Guild, and I am linking my resources in the video, so if you want to look at this stuff afterwards, you're welcome to do so. I did provide affiliate links, so if you click on it, it looks a little weird. It's just I added my affiliate account on there, so I get credit for any referrals. But in this case, like, here is the first floor of the actual the map pack that was put up for free on the DM's Guild. It looks pretty good. I like it. And then let's look at the one that comes with the adventure. So if we go to the Curse of Strahd adventure, so I want to come over to the campaign settings. Let me get my pointer out here so you guys can see what I'm pointing at. So I know that can be frustrating if you cannot follow the actual clicking and pointing. So over here on the right, I'm going to go to the actual assets. Hey, the sound links for... Yeah, well, that could just be the... I just turned it down. So I didn't want it to overpower my voice, but I did put it back on. So I'll put it in the very background. So basically the main thing here is that you can supplement your content, what you're running, depending on what you need. So let's take a look at the images that come with the module, and let's compare those to some of the ones that you can get from the DM's Guild. So I want to take the images here, and I want to open up the actual campaign images. So I'm going to go to the images folder, and then in the group over here, I want to pick the Curse of Strahd adventure. So let's see what we got here. So there's that. Van Richten's guide. Okay, Castle Ravenloft maps, Curse of Strahd, DM maps. Those are the player maps. That's what I want. Curse of Strahd player maps. So this is the Castle Ravenloft maps. Okay, I am going to go through the reference manual instead. It's a lot more organized. Okay, so some of these are just handouts, but you have all these DM maps in here. I want to look at some of the player maps. I think what they've done is they might have put a different layer on top so that, let's see. Okay, here we go. So let's look at the Death House. Okay, so this is the style of map that you would get with the adventure from Wizards of the Coast. Oh, yeah, okay. The sound links for the yeah, I got it. Yeah, that's what I'm using exactly. Yep. Yeah, those are going to be in the links in the actual at the end of the video. I got that in there too. So the map here is Death House, and this is like a side adventure that you can run in the Curse of Strahd. So it's an optional adventure that you can do in the beginning. It's a first level adventure. And I think I'd recommend that you do this, especially if you're new to D&D or Fantasy Grounds. I think just focusing on the Death House in the beginning is going to help you get a feel for the adventure, and also get all your sound set up if you use the sound links, and also give you a feel for what to expect. So I want to see what else we have here. So I want to look at the Castle Ravenloft from the actual adventure. So if I go to images and go back to the player maps, because these DM maps are very low quality. Okay, so here's Castle Ravenloft. See, this isn't going to help you much. It gives you a diagram of the height of it. So if someone was flying, let's say, in Fantasy Grounds, you could actually dial in your token to set the height of wherever they're at. So this will give you an idea of like the height of the towers and the actual parapets and that sort of thing. Let's see what else we got here. Castle Ravenloft. Okay, so here's another thing that comes up. So this is set up for essentially a three-dimensional kind of the old isometric view. I mean, you can use this, but it's very difficult to run an encounter in Fantasy Grounds like this with this perspective. So this isn't a very good map to use. It's good for reference, I would think, and give you an idea of how things are related. But I don't think for top-down virtual tabletop it's a very good option. It depends on your tokens and how familiar you are with the adventure. But I wouldn't, I definitely wouldn't run that map per se. And there are other maps too. There's tons of people that have made new versions of it because they don't want to go through the same issue. So this is the outdoor area. Yeah, so these maps look really cool, like perspective wise, because you have the chapel. Here's the courtyard. I want to look at the what you're getting here. So yeah, so this is just the map. So let's take a look at the. Let's see, Rooms of the Weeping, Dungeons and Catacombs. Yeah, so this is all the internal stuff here. Yeah, so I would definitely use something like this as opposed to this map here when it comes to running the adventure. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. It's kind of good for like a handout or something, but I don't know if I would necessarily run this for the adventure. It's just kind of more for pen and paper or for like theater of the mind type thing. I don't think it was really set very well for virtual tabletop. I think they were trying to look like the original Ravenloft adventure because this is kind of how the maps were set up back then. But nonetheless, you do have alternatives. So there's tons of third-party content on the DM's Guild. I also put a link for that on there because there are just a whole ton of books out there that can help you run this adventure. So, for instance, there's 100 books you can find in Ravenloft, so that might be good. Like if you have a library situation, there's some Barovian encounter maps. So this, I believe, is a Grim Press product. If I open this up, this has a whole bunch of the maps for the stuff outside. So if you had, like, let's say there's an abandoned campsite, so you'd be able to use this in your adventure, or there's some other places that probably are not as detailed in the adventure, but that are in this situation where you might be adventuring outside and around Barovia, not just in the castle or in the town proper. So the Old Valage Road, So they have several versions. They have a bright, they have a gridless, they have one that has graves on it. Let's take a look at this, see what it looks like. Yeah, so it has like fog around it and stuff. It looks really neat. So there are supplements out there that'll help you with actually running the adventure, and it will kind of add to whatever the story you're trying to tell. Now, I wouldn't load all this stuff up necessarily. I'm just kind of showing you some of the stuff that's out there. But one of the things that I'd recommend is when you run the Death House adventure, which is in the appendix in the Curse of Strahd adventure, and it is a house like, you know, near Barovia, and it has, or the town, and it has different things you can do for first level players. So this scripted thing here, what it does is it gives you a script of how this might run, and it gives you a kind of an experience viewpoint. It also, let me see what else we got here. And it gives you some ideas on how to run the adventure and to use it to the full potential for Fantasy Grounds. So there's room descriptions are numbered, and there's a Death House module, and there's all sorts of really cool stuff that helps run this thing. So like, for instance, you have all these descriptive rooms that have been updated, and it tells you what page number they're on, you know, that sort of thing. So if we go to the actual adventure, let's take a look at around page 213, the dining room. So if we go to Curse of Strahd and then go to the actual reference manual, yeah, so here's all the different, and it's called the Haunted House, and it's E7, it's a haunted house. This is described in Appendix B, the Death House. So when you click this, it takes you to the appendix of the Death House. So it doesn't look like they've done a lot of details on it, but what they're saying here is you can run this first level for first level characters with the help of the optional mini adventure. It's designed to advance characters to level 3. So players can create first level creatures and use the Haunted One character background if they want, or they can pick backgrounds from the player's handbook as normal. It says see the Fantasy Grounds module for the Haunted One background. So there's a module that gives you that. That gives you the, you know, the actual adventure. So now that we have that, what we're gonna do is take a look. So it says there's a mini adventure. Okay. So what this does is it's taking you to, this is the Barovian version that comes with the actual adventure for Curse of Strahd, but it's not as detailed as some of the content that you'll find on the actual DM's Guild or third-party modules. So they've taken this to a whole new level with the Death House. So there are tons of additional content that will supplement your adventure. You don't have to just run what's in the module or the adventure itself. So let me take a look at, see if I actually have this Death House module. I don't know if there's actually, see, this is this is the escaping the Death House. So there's at the end of the adventure, they want you to consider making that adventure a little bit more interesting. You have to escape at the end. So what they're saying is that at the possible ending of Death House, the cult is denied. You know that you probably try to escape the manor at the end, and it's kind of just a bunch of rolls, and you don't really get into much. Every character will roll to avoid being poisoned or smoked out from the fireplaces and that sort of thing. So you roll to get past the doorway, and then you might get carved up by a trap there. And then while they're thrilling and terrifying the first few times, it really becomes dull because you're just making a couple rolls to get out. So they basically take the skill challenges at the end of the adventure and kind of make them more interesting and more in depth and focused. So that's one of the things about the third-party content is they'll take the this story and kind of expand on it. And you don't necessarily have to use it, but it kind of gives you some context and some ideas of how you want to potentially expand your campaign and not just be stuck with what's in the adventure itself. There are also other supplements that give you more NPCs, more spells, more classes and races and player options. They're third party, but they'll definitely be something that you want to look into. There's this monster loot, Curse of Strahd. So if you defeat a creature or a monster within the adventure, typically this is a parcel or tables, and what it will do is generate, or it will create content for you so that you can have monster loot drops. So if you defeat a creature, you may not necessarily get treasure, but you're going to get like the harvesting stuff, like maybe the claws or the fur or something like that. So it isn't always treasure or magic items. Sometimes it's just harvesting material. But that can be an interesting add-on for your adventure if you have players that like to do downtime activities. So that's quite often overlooked in a lot of adventures. There's no content for that sort of thing in some adventures, so it's nice to have that at your disposal if you need it. And then a lot of these other ones are either player options for building characters, or they're more additional encounters in the world of in Ravenloft and Barovia, or Castle Ravenloft, for example, encounters in Castle Ravenloft. So this is a whole separate book that has additional encounters and stuff so that you can actually expand upon what's already there in the adventure. So that's a kind of a cool thing. And then I picked up something from Grimm Press. This is called the Book of Dead. It's an undead bestiary. So it's got a whole bunch of really cool gothic horror type creatures in it that you might use during your adventure. And even though it's not Ravenloft or the Curse of Strahd, there's a whole bunch of really cool fantasy type base adventures, or NPCs. And then of course there's one for Barovia, which is more outside of the castle and around the area. And then there's a player's compendium. Let's see what this gives us. So this kind of gives the players options for building and creating characters. And they have, looks like a half golem and a gloom touched, and then they have different paths for barbarians and bards. Clerics have different, like the exorcism domain. So it has a bunch of extra domains and extra classes that are kind of themed for the actual background for the adventure and such. So if you want stuff that's a little bit more focused in gothic horror and the actual setting, there's a lot of books that actually on the DM's Guild that supply that. So I also have the Syrinscape module loaded up, as Tom had mentioned earlier. So what that does is it just gives you context for when you're running the adventure. So if you're going to run let's see what we get for. I'm going to bring up the reference manual for it. And then I'm going to go ahead and resize this, because it's kind of important to have kind of a size set up for your window so it doesn't clobber your screen. You got some room to do stuff with. And let's go to Into the Mist. So this is basically a intro, and then you come into this area where it talks about the history of Strahd von Zarovich. Then there's a section here that talks about the role-playing of him. So it gets into this intimate thing where you're going to have to kind of get to know who Strahd is and his story. I recommend that if you're starting off, if you've never played anything to do with Ravenloft or Curse of Strahd, that you take a look at some books, and also get inspired by some horror movies, like like the Vampire, Lestat, and those kind of things. Those will help give you some context for gothic horror. And then as far as this adventure goes, read through at least the parts that touch on Strahd, because he has motives, and he kind of has a living, even though he's undead, but he kind of has a motivation, and that can also change throughout the adventure, depending on how you do this. But there's a fortune thing where you can tell fortunes for Ravenloft. It talks about where this will set up where he is in the castle. the placement of important items throughout the adventure, and the identity of a powerful ally in the fight against Strahd. So these are some of the things that come out in the fortunes. And then there's a template for fortune reading, and then there's a crib sheet that actually has a bunch of really handy little links that talk about where these things are and how they occur. So this crib sheet is kind of like a cheat sheet. It has his stat block, it has the actual history, and it will have his goals, depending on the Taroka and also how your campaign flows. And then also some minions that he has at his disposal, like dire wolves, ghouls, Strahd zombies, swarms of bats, vampire spawns, and wolves, and then there's none. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's been kind of added into Fantasy Ground to make it a little bit easier to run. It can get pretty overwhelming, though, if you load up too much content. The only reason I have all this stuff loaded is I'm trying to show the different options that you could have for running the adventure, depending on your needs and your familiarity with the platform and the setting. So you may just want to use the adventure and not add all this stuff on, because it might, piling the stuff on may not be a good idea in the beginning. So let's take a look at the lands of Barovia, lay of the land. So the adventure actually starts in chapter 3, it looks like. So all this stuff here is all informational. So if you got the time to look at this stuff, I would definitely read into different aspects of this adventure, especially the stuff that relates to the landscape and to Strahd himself. There's some adventure hooks that you can probably use to help you get involved with the world, because you might be warping from your own campaign into the Mist, or you can be starting in Barovia or one of the other Dread domains, depending on what you're doing and how your campaign is progressing. But there's Werewolves in the Mist, Plea for Help, Mysterious Adventures, and Creeping Fog. So in Creeping Fog, the characters are traveling a lonely road through the woods when the fog engulfs them, spiriting them away to the land of Barovia. That's probably the easiest one to incorporate. Werewolves in the Mist, as they're drawn together by a series of werewolf attacks. The Mysterious Visitors is you're asked to scare off a band of rowdy travelers who are camped outside of the town of Daggerford in the Forgotten Realms. So this is tied directly into the Forgotten Realms. The Plea for Help is the actual classic adventure where someone comes in and they give you this letter, and you find out that it's not what it appears to be. So that's pretty cool. They got a lot of different adventure hooks, and you can obviously make up your own. You don't have to use those, but those are a good way to get into the world itself. And then once you're in there, one of the recommendations at the end of this adventure in regards to the index is the Death House adventure, and that seems to be where a lot of people like to kind of test their mettle when it comes to running the adventure and getting used to the Death House. So it has some features in here, and I'm sure that someone has created a map for this already, but it says that it's the Death House is kind of a living thing, and it's aware of its surroundings and all the creatures within it. Its goal is to continue the work of the cult by luring visitors to their doom. Various important features of the house are summarized here. So it gives you a summary of all the main features of the house itself. It doesn't look like they fully detailed this, but I know that there's other maps out there where people have taken and created the map for the Death House, and they've detailed it. They put monsters in it and all kinds of stuff, so it's kind of cool. But that's in the appendice in the end. So the Death House has its features, and then there's some areas in the house, and here's the map. And let's see if we can go to the battle map. Yep. And then there's all the locations. So I'm pretty sure there's another map for this and one of the other things I've loaded up. Let me check out the images, and I'll check out Death House, see if there's anything else. I know I've seen it before. Yeah, it looks like that. I gotta take the filter off because I had it just on that. Death House. Okay, so Curse of Strahd, yeah, there's a DM map and a player map. Okay. So I don't have anything loaded at the moment, but I know there's better maps that are more set up for Fantasy Grounds or for Virtual Tabletop. There's probably even some fancy ones that have lighting and everything else, like animated maps for it. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's say we're going to run Death House. What do we got here? Here's the main hall. And when we get to these sort of things in Fantasy Grounds, this is the main hall for the Death House. So if I bring up the content here and go to the context menu, this is the Death House backing music that's playing right now. So this is what, you know, but you can add your own too. Like you might have like some weird creepy sounds. Let's see if we can do the Den of Wolves. Let's see. So there's a trap door. And there may not be audio set up for every single area, so you can obviously do your own. Like maybe you make a creaking sound, a context sound for this particular trapdoor. So you can probably add that in if you need to. So let's take a look. I'm going to go to the sound content and go into the settings. And then I want to go ahead and type in creaking or creak. Oops, wrong tab. You got to be in the correct tab.
The door opens with a creak, revealing a massive chamber that looks like an audience. On the far side, a broad set of stairs leads to where a throne might have been seen.
So that one was from what is that? The Pathfinder. Cool. All right, so let's take a look. Bones, creaking door. Let's try that. Huh. Creaking. Lots of creaking sounds. Creaking house. Realmsmith. Okay. But as you see, when you play these, it'll go up into this menu here. And you can select these. So. Huh. Weird. So, creaking beams. Huh. Interesting. So you can create your own kind of mix of audio for different areas. You just have to know the content and maybe place a link in here so that you have it at your disposal when you get to this part in the adventure. So you can, in most cases, you can unlock adventures and add in your own links if you need to. So if there's certain parts of the adventure, like I was trying to do with this trapdoor, you might be able to find a trapdoor link and add it to what's already there. So a lot of these sounds are probably situated more with the castle itself. So when you're running this adventure, you might get more of the context from depending on where you're at in the adventure itself. So let's look at Castle Ravenloft and see if, because this is for the Death House. So let's see if there's one for the actual, let's see, Van Richten's Tower. There's a village. Okay, here's Castle Ravenloft. It's in Chapter 4. So we'll go with player map 1, which we discovered it wasn't. Yeah, these maps are not set up for. Yeah, see, these are all 3D kind of. I mean, they look cool, but they're not really set up for virtual tabletop very well. So that's why the community kind of came in behind this adventure when it first came out, and they started building content for it because it was more set up for like pen and paper, theater of the mind. So they didn't really have the fancy maps yet, and then somebody had come behind this, and quite a few people actually, and they made their own maps, and a lot of them are set up for Fantasy Grounds or for some of the other virtual tabletops. So this is encounters. So go to the main floor. So here's the battle map. Like I said, we had that other one loaded earlier, which was really a lot more conducive. So this is map 3. So I want to go to the images that I had earlier. Let's see, Curse of Strahd maps. Okay, that's the Death House. Yeah, so this is just kind of some of the stuff that you can get into when it comes to playing in Ravenloft and such, because it's a lot of content on top of what's already out. And if you haven't run the adventure yet, this is a treat, because when it first came out, there was nothing for it. I mean, you pretty much had to wing everything. And now that it's been out for a while, it's definitely got a ton of assets for it. I mean, there's tokens and maps and Taroka cards and all kinds of stuff. Like, I loaded an extension from the Fantasy Grounds Forge called Decked Out. This is by Sayedgil. And I went ahead and brought this in, but you can drop your decks of cards. So basically, they would be all images. You can use the top here to do the back side of the deck, and then down below, you can drag images for all the suits and all the different cards that you have. So it has all the suits, supports that, along with the back card and 2 jokers. So you can have 52 cards plus the jokers. And so if you wanted to use the Taroka deck in a more interactive way, instead of how they have it set up in the adventure, there's ways to do that too. And there's even really good art on the DM's Guild and elsewhere where people have actually created their own cards, which are basically just images, and you load them up in Fantasy Grounds and help you, kind of supplement your game, especially when you're doing the fortune telling. That can be a really intense scene if you set it up right and you got all the audio set up. Let's check out this. These are all maps. Okay, here we go. So this is actually part of the adventure, and there's the encounter. So here's Radin. I'm going to put him on the combat tracker, and let's see what he does. So with his offense, so he has a scimitar. So this is attack roll. And some of these won't trigger unless you have a target. So if you're checking out the actual sounds for the sound sets, just remember that some things have to be targeted or they have to be attacked. So if you just roll randomly like I just did, you may not get any sort of sound unless you actually target or affect something. So in some cases, these don't make any sounds until you actually do something with it, like apply it to an NPC or one of your players. So just remember that, like, not everything has a sound. And let's see if I can find the context for Ravenloft for the actual setup. So let me go to the sound sets, and I have this already kind of set here. So let's go to Castle Ravenloft. And here's the mood music for that. I'm kind of getting tired of that other background music. And let me go with the context. Okay. So yeah, this is the background for the castle. So when you first get there, this is the context menu that comes up. So that's pretty cool. So it automatically populates in here, and then you can, sometimes they're triggered by events, but most of the time you're going to have to start them yourself depending on where you are on the map. But at least all the links pop up, so you don't have to search for them. That's really cool. Yeah, that's pretty neat. So what you can do here is you can definitely supplement your adventures with these little sound links. Let's see, Madam Ava. Oh wow, she has her own effect. So let's try that. Let me turn that up. So these are NPC sounds for Madam Ava. So you can even link the sound sets to the chat window, which is really... There she goes. Kind of cool. And then she has her own mood music for her tent. So what I like about the sound sets that come with Syrinscape is that they kind of fade in and out nicely. When you're using your own chat triggers, like if you make up your own, they're a little bit harder to control, and you don't have that buffering where you can actually have it duck underneath another sound and that sort of thing. So the transitions between the scenes and the audio is a lot more smooth when you're using something like Syrinscape. I mean, you could set it up that way yourself if you have audio and volume control, but within Fantasy Grounds, it's kind of harder to do, and you'd have to have an actual mixer and a bunch of other cool effects and stuff in place. You could do it, but it'd be a lot of work. This kind of cuts some of the work down, but you could technically get your own sounds and trigger them with Fantasy Grounds. So I don't want this whole thing to be about sound, but since the new sound pack has dropped, we can take a look at some of these. I want to hear that Madam Eva one again. How dare you! Pretty cool. Let's take a look at her NPC entry. So we're playing the mood music for her, the background. And then we have, let me see her NPC. Let's go to NPCs. Type Madam Eva. This is a neat new feature. Yeah, it is kind of cool. Like, some people are all, pissed off because they don't want to buy more stuff, but all the links are just a convenience pack. The audio links, you're not getting the actual audio, but you're getting the associations with the module already built into it. So that helps. Like when you get to a certain area, you can pull up the context menu. All the links that they have, the official ones, are set up so you don't have to do it yourself. But you could technically take the entire module and make your own sound context items if you want to. But this is just kind of, those people are pissed off. They're like, oh, it's $10, but what do I need it for? Well, you don't need it if you don't have a Syrinscape subscription and you don't use audio. And then also there's the other fight where you have to actually port your audio into Discord or something if you don't use the online Syrinscape player. And then you have to set up all this other stuff. So that has never changed or gone away. And that's not really a Smiteworks issue. That's a computing technical issue more so than anything else. So if you're not sure how to set up your audio outside of what they've integrated into Fantasy Grounds, it's going to be a little extra work. I've already done a lot of videos on it. It's a ton of work, but once it's set up, it's nice. But getting to that point, a lot of people don't have the patience or the time for it. So that's kind of why these things are handy, and they kind of just work out of the box, and you're not fighting and spending hours setting up these links. So they've already paid someone to do that. And that's essentially what you're doing, is you're paying for their time. The links are already hosted on the Syrinscape website. The audio is hosted there. All you're doing is triggering them from this adventure. And that's essentially what the sound link packs are. They're not actual sounds. They're not the adventure. They're just the pieces that go to the adventure. So a lot of people have a misconception that if they buy this Syrinscape pack, then that's going to fix all their problems. It's not. It's basically all it is giving you access to predefined links that go to the adventure that are defined within the adventure depending on what's going on in your actual adventure. So it's kind of I think it's kind of a misunderstanding, because I know people have bought the packs and they thought that they can just play sounds from their computer and not have to do any setup and that sort of thing, and then they ask for a refund because they don't really know what they purchased. And I get that. If you're new to Fantasy Grounds or integrating audio into the adventure, I can understand the initial confusion for sure. But this kind of appeals for people that are kind of already familiar, or if you want to dive into getting to know how this stuff works, that might appeal to you. But some people don't like it. They're like, nah, I don't need all that extra stuff, but I think it's kind of cool. It's another way to engage your players and kind of make the adventure more interesting and fun. And if you're a paid game master and you're getting to actually get some sort of compensation for running the game, I think that this would be a really cool way to kind of up your game in regards to the quality of the actual adventure. And not to mention, there's artwork outside of Fantasy Grounds and this particular adventure that would work with it. You can import your own images. I'm pretty sure there's some animated packs out there. There's got to be I haven't even looked at that yet, but I want to see if there's any really cool animated maps for maybe the Death House at least or something. I don't know if somebody had the time or if they even had the rights to publish a map that's based on the original Ravenloft or Curse of Strahd or Van Richten's. But I think for running this adventure, the most, I want to say the most needed books, if you're going to do this, is definitely the Player's Handbook. You need the Curse of Strahd, obviously, that's the adventure. And then if you can get the Van Richten's guide, those are the main, and maybe the Monster Manual. Those are the main books to run this thing. And then you can go on the DM's Guild, and there's these Castle Ravenloft maps that were created for Fantasy Grounds. Everything's already linked. So if I pull up one of these maps, this is just for Castle Ravenloft, not the entire adventure. So if I go to this main floor and bring up the player's map, this is basically how it is. And here's the entryway with the cobwebs. And it's kind of hard to see because it's dark, right? It makes sense. It's dark. So I want to grab the NPC and kind of put it on the map. Let's see what the quality of this map is. I've seen this map before. I've played with it, but this was in the early days when Fantasy Grounds and the actual line of sight was still pretty new. So it's really buggy and annoying to use, but now they've really done a pretty good job, like kind of cleaning that up. So here's the map. Here's the front entryway. Pretty cool. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at putting a NPC on the map. So if I go to the combat tracker, here's Rahadin, so let's put him on the map. I just kind of want to see what's going on here. Yeah, so that's what it looks like for a player. And I'm pretty sure he has dark vision, so he may, already have an advantage on that. But then here's a door that's closed. You can open that up. Here's the front door. Yeah, this is pretty cool. So this is more ideal to running the adventure, I think, in my, basic, my basic limited knowledge of this. And then, I think the adventure runs a little smoother when you have content that actually has the Fantasy Grounds and the line of sight and all that stuff in mind. This is pretty cool. I actually like it. Let's see what we got here. So this is the actual player's perspective. The one I was looking at before was the GM perspective. So this is what the player would see. And this, you can see he's got dark vision. It's kind of black and white. But when I turn off the player vision, this is kind of a combined view of the DM/player view. But when I actually turn on the player view, it shows his vision actually, which is all black and white because he's got dark vision. Let me take it, and it's additive, so any light that you have, and then if there's any ambient light inside, it will add to it, so it'll kind of combine. So dark vision kind of blows it for me. I don't know. Let me take a look at the map itself without that. So I'm not sure. Let me go to the lighting and go to the, not the ambient lighting, but this. So I don't know why, but I think these should have been actually put torches on there if you wanted to. Put it on a separate layer, so maybe they'll light up when you come inside automatically, you know, that kind of thing. So if you're going to do something like that to this map that's already made, I just make sure I'm not selected on this actual layer. And where these little torch lights are, you can add lighting if you want. So maybe these are torches or candle sconces. So maybe I'll do candles since they're not as bright. So I'll go ahead to the add lighting, and then I'm going to use the candle preset, and then just click where I want those candles to be, so that on this particular map you can see the little sconces here. So I will take that as a cue and add that in there. They probably didn't add it because they didn't want to assume that every GM wants these on here. But if you put these on, you kind of have that ambiance at somebody's home. But what's nice is you can actually turn this layer off. So you can do a dramatic entry where when the players show up, you can turn on these candles like they just magically lit up by themselves, which could be kind of alarming for some people. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like without the GM view. So there's more of the look when it has the candles on. So yeah, I definitely would have had the candles probably just for the ambience. Maybe the rest of the castle, not so much, but in this case, yeah. And then you could turn them off. So you could put, let's call this, we're going to have a name for it. So we'll call this entryway candle. So we know what it's for, and we're not struggling later on to figure out what the heck was what. So we're going to call that entryway candles. And that way we'll know what this means when we're running the adventure. So what we can do here now is we can actually turn those off. And then when the players get into the castle, we can just flicker them on and say, oh, the lights just kind of went on or they went out. I think there's a scene in the classic Ravenloft where a wind comes through the doorway and it kind of swirls around in this entryway and blows all the candles out. So that could be a way to add that kind of mysterious, kind of creepy vibe. So that's cool, especially if they forget to shut these doors. You know, that makes sense. So we can open this door up. Here's the outside. So there's a little bit of an outside area. Yeah, I really like this map. This is actually free, I believe. This is on the DM's Guild. At the end of the video, I got a link for a search filter for the DM's Guild, and I'm pretty sure this map pack is in there. I think that's where I got this. And it's a free module that was put up on the DM's Guild for people running Curse of Strahd. So, and what's nice is they've gone through and they've added all the links that are from the official adventure. So if you have the adventure loaded and you click on one of these links, it will link to the proper story entry in the Curse of Strahd adventure. And of course, you can add your own if you need to, but I think this is pretty cool. And I want to see what's playing in the background now. This is really cool. So I want to go to the sound here. It's still Madame Eva's stuff, but maybe this is that's her tent. Oh, okay, so that was that. Let's do the fight with Rahadin. Ooh, wow, that's pretty loud. I turn that down. That scared the crap out of me. Pretty cool. So yeah. So here he is. Nice. I like it. So you can use Misty Step. He's got Magic Weapon. So he casts it on himself. So if he was going to cast a spell once per day, he can do Magic Weapon. So I just drag and drop that onto his NPC token, and then those effects. He gets +1 on damage, +1 on attack, and its attack type is now Magic. Pretty cool. I like it. So that's just some of the things that you might come across when you're running the adventure. Is you kind of have to decide, like, you know, what's important to you and your players. Not all this stuff is going to appeal to everyone. I mean, honestly, it can kind of be overkill. You know, if you overdo it, you know, it might be too much for you to manage on top of what you already have to do. So I would say this is more geared for the overall adventure is more geared for like an intermediate kind of group or a DM. I don't know if a new game master would want to run this, although I would do the Death House at the minimum, because that's a level 1 adventure. It was designed for that. So that might be the ticket, is to actually use the Death House adventure as your intro and kind of build up your characters and allow for you to kind of get used to the Fantasy Grounds platform and also the sound triggers and all that kind of stuff. So that way, when you actually play the real adventure, the full adventure, you kind of have an idea of what's going on before you dive into it. And it's kind of like a good way to do like a one-shot or a way to vet your players. So maybe use the Death House, as its name implies. You know, players you don't like, kill them. But it's just a matter of, that's not good advice, but just thinking Death House is kind of like maybe a meat grinder adventure, so that you can filter out the players in a certain way, but that's kind of mean. But nonetheless, I think the meat grinder approach might be a little too much for new players, especially if it's their first time. So you don't want to necessarily do that right away. But if you got experienced players and you got like 10 people trying to play, I would just run a couple one-shots and see which players you want out of those two groups. And you could do something like that. But this is a really cool adventure. It's probably one of the best ones that was ever written by Wizards of the Coast. There are some contenders like Tomb of Annihilation, Dragon Heist for Waterdeep, you know, those sort of things. Maybe Avernus, you know, those. But this is probably one of the top. I think this is the #1 adventure. So if you're going to dive into Fantasy Grounds and D&D and all that, I think this is one of the ones you want to do. Like I said, do the Death House thing. Just focus on the Death House adventure in the beginning. Make your own assets, build it up so where you got your party, and you figure out which players are going to go on to the big adventure. That's a good way to kind of see where you're at in your skills, and then also your players, because there's going to be a lot of hand holding and setting up and that sort of thing, and you want to do that in the beginning before you start a big campaign. So there's another map pack that's by Grim Press. This is images that come out of that. I think this is more for like the surrounding areas. I don't know if this one has Ravenloft Castle in it. No, this is all the surrounding areas. So that's cool. So if you take that Castle Ravenloft map and then you use the Barovian Encounters map, you probably have quite a few maps that are already kind of set up for Virtual Tabletop, and you don't have to do that much work and setting up all the line of sight. Now, if you are subscribed on the forums, there is a high-res map that Zacchaeus made. Yeah, watch the volume levels. Yeah, that's for sure. That scared the crap out of me. So Zacchaeus also made his own maps. These were, way back when. This is probably still classic. But these are basically the maps that he made. They're not too bad. He just used like campaign cartographer or something like that, or Dungini. The only thing is that these are so old that they don't have the line of sight on them yet, at least as far as I know. There's no line of sight been put on these, but these are free on the Fantasy Grounds forums. You have to search for them. I didn't provide a link for it, but he put out I don't know if this comes with the adventure. Sometimes they do that. Very rare, though. But they might have included this in the adventure for Fantasy Grounds. But these are more conducive to running virtual tabletop. So these wouldn't be actually that bad to do the line of sight on these. So if you wanted to use the Chaos's maps, there's those. So that would be fun to do. For practice, at least, you could do the line of sight on these. So that would be fun. But I don't think you'd want to do that right before an adventure starts. So here's his castle grounds. Instead of the 3D map, you got this outdoor area, which is kind of cool. Let's go with, okay, so this is the entryway, I believe. So this is kind of a reimagined version of the map that we were just looking at. The other map was facing left to right. This is facing north to south. So if you wanted to change the orientation on it, you can. So if you unlock it and highlight this and maybe rotate it to the left. So I'm going to go to the layers and then rotate it that way. So this is kind of how the other map was set up. Just like that. And then you can use this for, for your adventures if you want. So I like both of them. Actually, this one is a little bit more, I don't know, it just seems a little bit more defined. The other one's a little bit more artsy. I like that it had the crest on the floor, that sort of thing. And I think there's an asset, actually. Let me check I don't know what that symbol's called. But I'm going to go into my assets and go into images. And let's take a look at Strahd. I'm just going to use that as my search term. So here's Count Strahd. Here we go. So here's the crest. Yeah, it's not exactly, they haven't gone through and turned all these into transparencies. But it looks like you could use this as an asset if you wanted to. So that would just mean you could drag this into this tile area. So let me go back to that assets, images, and Strahd. And I'll take this asset here, drag it up to the tile. And it's pretty big. It's like 14 by something rather. So this area is only like 4 by 4. So I'm just going to put 4 in there. And then click in the center and let's see what we get. Yeah, so then what I would do is into selection mode, rotate it. So it kind of faces when you come in. And then take the, you can take the transparency down. So go to this tint area. I kind of turn that down so it's not, there we go. So now you kind of have the silhouette without the background. It kind of looks a little bit more natural too that way. Like it's part of the texture. So I mean, you can do your own kind of cool stuff with the assets that you already have. Or if you have a subscription to the art packs, there's so many things you can do to dress this up. And on the other map, I noticed it had the torch sconces. This one doesn't. So you could actually place those where you wanted to. If you wanted a torch sconce, and then assign a light to them through the map pack and through the assets. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, this is free on the Fantasy Grounds forums, or it might have come with the adventure. I don't remember. But this is Ravenloft Maps High Res. So that's what it's called. And then the other one from the DM's Guild, the colorful one, the more modern one, is Castle Ravenloft Player Maps. And that is on the DM's Guild for free, I believe. And then this Barovian Encounters pack is for all the stuff outside and around the castle. It's not exactly the same artist, but it's still pretty cool. And then there's things like these sidekicks for adventure sidekicks for Curse of Strahd. So let's see what those look like. So they're, oh, cool. So there's some NPCs that you might want to supplement your adventure with, and they have them at different levels. So like Ismark, they have him from 2nd level all the way up to 10th level. So these are like NPC sidekicks that you could use. Here's Rictavio, there's a Were-Raven, there's one of the Wachter brothers. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you can use these guys to supplement your adventures and to bring along with you occasionally if you need like an extra muscle or maybe even as an adversary. And then you have, let's see, what's the other stuff we got here? Encounters in Barovia, Ravenloft Player's Compendium, kind of mentioned that already. Monster Loot. So there's a ton. I mean, there's so many different things that it's just phenomenal. So the Syrinscape thing here is not too hard to set up. Right now, I have it set on the on my desktop audio, so it's playing through the Syrinscape player, and this is the actual link that I'll give my players once you set that up inside of the campaign. So if you have the sound sets and you have everything installed, when you go to the settings here, this is where you control. Here's all the here's what's playing now. Here's the context menu for that NPC. And then here's the volume, so I can turn those down, turn the one-shots down. Those are way up. And then when you go to the settings and you go to Syrinscape, you do the web import, which is going to import all the links from the website. Then you're going to click Generate to create a session, and that's going to create a session here. And then you do an invite link, and then that link is used for players to join the session as I am now. And then there's a session controls link that takes you to the DM side, so you can actually manually operate this stuff in the background through Syrinscape Player instead of through the interface for Fantasy Grounds. So you can do a lot of different things with the sound, but again, see, I just shut off the sound because I just closed the player. So if you're going to do this without the Syrinscape player and you want to assign your own sounds, you're going to have to either assign your own sounds through the file manager or through this VLC plugin. And then on top of that, you're going to have to set up all your triggers like they had before in these context menus. And then you have to route the audio to Discord or wherever you're going to put it. Now, if you're using OBS, I'll bring this over here just in case you guys stream. But for OBS, you can set up your desktop audio just to play the audio, or you could just make it to where it will set up for like if you wanted to create a sound module just for that particular session. So what you could do is come into the mixer and then you can add your own element. So I'm going to add a source, and in this case it's going to be a website or a URL. So browser source, and then you hit add source, and I already have Syrinscape set up here, but when you add this as a source, you have this separate interface here that you can control. And then this would be something that you can link. You can have this shrunk down, maybe somewhere you could show the processes going on in the background if you want. And having this as a separate control, and then you don't have to have your desktop audio active. That way, in case you have other events going off, like maybe you're on a different website and it's got sound in it, or maybe you're on YouTube looking at something, whatever. Generally don't have this problem, but you can set up a separate sound source, and then when you actually have Syrinscape here, you can interact with it. So you can control the audio via Streamlabs desktop, which is nice. And then you can also change the window size, the initial window size. And this is the URL, which is the actual mood that you're using, which in this case would be the URL for the campaign. So if I go back to this and I go to join session, I can actually just waiting for the browser to come up. Okay, so I can hit copy here and then take that and put it into the browser link instead of the one I have now, which is a different session. So you might have to change those out if you do it this way. So in this case, I'm just going to take this URL and replace it with this one, and then hit close, and then take the I don't know if that's playing yet or not, so let me go to Fantasy Grounds, play something. Let's see, sound sets. Let's go with Baba La Saga. Let's see, here's a mood.
Woo!
See if that plays anything. Essentially, you could set these up. Yeah, it's playing, but it's not routing to the mixer. So you have to change that. So if I go to properties, and then let's go to Syrinscape. Yep. Monitor off, only monitor and output. Okay. And then you turn up the, I don't know, I don't have the audio routed correctly, but essentially you have to route this either to Discord or to your players or whatever. So this is where you would route it from if you're going to set it up this way. And it's also a good way to record. So even if you're not streaming and you just want to record your sessions, this might be a good way to do that, so that you have the choice of kind of recollecting what happened in your last session, and then you can also capture the audio from Discord, your desktop and such. It was playing pretty good for a remote. Yeah, not too bad. It's still playing, but it's, for some reason, I don't have the audio routed properly. Yeah, for the viewers, yeah. So I don't have these properties set up right. But it's basically, you can go through the, you know, maybe it's in the global settings. Yeah, it's probably to do with this, because I have it routed to my headset. But I think if I put this on default or something like that, it's going to change the routing. Yeah, I just, let's see. So this is a mic. So this might be, you know, what I need to do for, you know, something like this. We'll see. But anyways, so you got to change the routing if you're going to have it play for your players. Now, that's only if you have, like, you know, local sounds and you're not using the Syrinscape player. If you are using the player, it's so much easier just to give them the link and let them listen to it remotely, because then they can change the volume on their end, and, you know, they can shut it off if they don't want it. When you do it through Discord, there's usually a bot involved or some sort of extension or whatever, and then you got all this other hoopla to deal with. So it's nicer to have this set up through Syrinscape, I think, in the long run. But there are people who have pretty extensive sound sets and they don't want to pay the subscription. So, you know, there is a way to do it. It's just a lot of work. And that hasn't changed. That's not really a Smiteworks thing. That's just a physical limitation of the computing. I mean, it's a technical thing, so it's not really on them to figure that out. And that's kind of how it was in the beginning, like a long time ago when I used to use the DOE sound set. We had to do everything manually. Well, when you learn that way, you kind of understand how everything goes together. When you're coming at this brand new and you're looking at from the top down, it's really kind of different and foreign and kind of harder for you to wrap your mind around. But when you come from the bottom up, it's so much easier to figure out how to use the rig. It's like, oh, this is a cakewalk. This is nothing compared to how it used to be. But anyways, those are just some tips and some resources that you can use to run the Curse of Strahd. And this is the Gothic background. I don't remember if this is paid or not. It probably is. It comes with the the art subscription. But one of my favorite background images is there's a blood splatter. It kind of goes better. I don't typically use the Syrinscape logo, or I'll totally cancel it out altogether, the background. But if you go to your options, and then you go to your background decal, you have to wait a few seconds, but it's going to pull up all the related images that you have loaded for your campaigns and your adventures if they have any decals. And of course you can set your own. You don't have to use the ones that come with the adventure. You can use just about any image that you want, including the WebM images. It doesn't I'm not talking about the animated one, just a flat image. So these are some of the stuff that you can get from the art subscription, and then some of these come with the adventures, but I think that's the one that I like the best with the blood splatter. I think there might be one other, but that's the one I use for the background. It's a little less distracting and kind of more gruesome. But when you use the dice tower down here in the bottom, and you use the Gothic theme, when you drop a die inside this gargoyle, the lights and his eyes shine up. His eyes will start shining. So to actually put that there, it makes it shine. So it's kind of cool. I like that. It's a little big for this, but it works fine. It works fine. So, anyways, I think I'm gonna go. I've just been rambling for almost an hour and a half now. I know some of this is rather scattered and unorganized, but some of these things hopefully will inspire you to seek for other materials and look beyond the obvious and actually make the adventure your own, and not just, you don't have to play it cookie cutter all the way through. Although if you're new, I would just do it that way until you get used to things and then start winging it yourself. Like I said, use the Death House. So if you go to the DM's Guild and you have an account with them. They use PayPal, by the way, and a credit card. So DM's Guild. So if you have an account here, you can filter this out. So you go to, let's go with, alright, so storyline. We can go to Curse of Strahd, but that filters out a lot of stuff. You go to format, you can go to Virtual Tabletop. That filters out a lot of stuff. And then the format type, you can go to Fantasy Grounds. And that also filters out. So there's tons of stuff, but here's the Castle Ravenloft map pack that I was telling you about. So there's a mod, the actual module, and then there's a zip file that contains the individual images, so you can do it yourself. But it's pretty neat how they did this, and they made it free. This has been out for a little while, but there is a suggested price, but you know, you can get it for free if you put $0 in there, or give them $1 or give them something. But it's basically a module that's edited player maps, and there was someone in the community named Pigeon on the Wing. It incorporates all the pins found in the Fantasy Grounds Curse of Strahd 5e module included right on the maps. There's making Castle Ravenloft funner and easier to run for DMs. Use the module. He encourages that you get the Curse of Strahd module for Fantasy Grounds, of course. Once you own it, make sure it's loaded, and all the pins will become active, and you'll be able to use this. And it includes linking new player maps and back to the original isometric ones easier. So this is just a demonstration of the content that you can find on here. And like I said, I'll put the links for this stuff at the end of the video. But there are all kinds of different things here that you can get, and it's really, really robust now. They even got trinkets. You know, they got effects packs that are already set up for this, and then they also have like these Ravenloft characters. So someone's made a couple dozen pre-gens. So if you don't want to spend hours making characters, you can do that. This is a Grand Ballroom. So you could use this in a Ravenloft adventure if you wanted to. And this is actually Angela Maps and Spooky Action Games. So even though it's not exactly Ravenloft, it may, you know, help you set up your adventures. And then you have like all these different things that can contribute or add to your adventure. So if you use the Fantasy Grounds portals, the portal pack, you know, critically awesome essentials, you know, the druid pack and such, there's a portal pack that you can get that already has the warping points, or the places where it has 157 portals for the adventure. It basically allows you to portal to all the maps within the adventure, so you can automatically set up and be ready to go on all maps with one click of a button. So what this does is, if you have the adventure and then you have the portals pack and all that, you load this up and it will have the jump points from one map to the next, so you don't have to set it up yourself. And that's kind of where they've, you know, where it saves you time, basically, is what this is. So you have that, and then of course there's all these different adventures that are exactly not just adventures, but content that allows you to enhance your games. Like I said, you have backgrounds for your players and all kinds of stuff. So this is just some things that might help you down the road once you get going in the campaign. But take a look at your options, and then, you know, run the Death House or the Death Curse or whatever it is. I was going to look for that. So Death House. I want to take off these filters, because in case it's not in Fantasy Grounds. I think it is, but I don't remember. If it isn't, I don't know why. I mean the community content, not the adventure. The adventure's already there. I just want to see what the map looks like, if there is any. So I want to go to Death House, and then yeah, there's some audio, by the way. If you haven't noticed, this would be something you could use for the third-party triggers. There's some props. So these are handouts that you can use that are basically PDFs, but you can extract the images out and use these in your game. So this is really cool for adding kind of immersion to your game. There's this Death House Revisited, which is another supplement that you can use. And basically, it helps to make a more terror-filled experience in the Curse of Strahd bonus feature, the Death House. So this is, you know, just more stuff that helps you with that. So I would just focus on the Death House for the beginning. I just kind of get used to the campaign setting. Here's the Curse of Strahd, the Tome of Strahd. These are really cool. These are more lore-based, but there's puzzles, and there's all kinds of really cool clues and different things for you to add to your adventure. I actually picked these up a while ago. There's some bonus maps and tokens, so if you want different maps and tokens, you have this sort of thing. So you got these cartoon-looking tokens. So it's really neat. I like the community has made a lot of cool stuff. Here's some random encounters. They're probably tables and 20 different encounters in here. So this would probably have to be converted if it hasn't already been done so. But nonetheless, there's just tons of stuff. So I got that in the description, the filter. That'll filter it down to Fantasy Grounds and Virtual Tabletop. So hopefully that helps you guys a little bit, and I hope that you guys can spend some time adventuring in Barovia and have some fun, and take care.